Does the president have a point? Could this actually, the slowdown we're seeing, force China to meet up, or at least meet and have a deal?
Well, it certainly is hurting the economy. There's no doubt about that, Yvonne. I mean, net exports contributed 20% of growth to China's economy in the last quarter. I think there's a view that these tariffs will have an even bigger impact in the months ahead. And of course, if the president increases those tariffs, well, the impact will get even bigger. Nonetheless, though, there have been some signs of stabilization in the economy, as you know well. We saw a better pickup on the retail sales side of things in the month of June, though some economists will say that was down to incentives for buying new cars. But net, I think the big takeaway is that the trade war is biting, and of course it's probably the biggest uncertainty facing China in the rest of this year at least.
Should we expect the PBOC to do less? I think is the key question, one of the questions that we were grappling with yesterday. Or is it too early to ask that question?
I think there's a sense that, you know, it's things clearly stabilised in June, but this could be as good as it gets because, remember, if you take a look at consumption, actually, consumption is the biggest contributor to China's economic growth. It has slipped from 65% to 60% over the first half. We see that imports are also weak, and that all indicates weak domestic demand. So I think there's a view that the government will certainly have to support growth, and whether it's through the central bank in trying to get banks to lend more, or whether it's through supply side and pushing those tax cuts through or spending more on infrastructure, I think it would be a brave call to say that there won't be more public support for the economy in the coming months.
And despite this temporary stabilization, several economists have noted they expect continued slowdown, with Bloomberg economists saying this raises the prospects of growth below 6%. What are you hearing?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Selena. I mean, I guess there's no doubt that growth is slowing, but that brings up the political question, of course, of whether or not the government would be comfortable in allowing growth to slip below their target. We know it's 6 to 6.5%. One would assume that the closer we get to the bottom of that range, the government will step up their efforts to make sure activity is kept on track. For sure, it could do for one of the quarters, but I think net, by the time we get to the end of the year, it would be something of a surprise if annual growth was to slip below that target, and all the indications are so far that they remain quite on track.